Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth, squinting at the massive hulk of metal that had been towed into Bay 7 of the Frontier Station repair dock. 23 years of fixing everything from mining haulers to luxury yachts hadn't prepared him for this sight. The ship before him defied every principle of engineering he understood. The vessel stretched nearly 200 meters from nose to tail, its hull crafted from what appeared to be a single piece of midnight black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Organic curves flowed seamlessly into geometric patterns, as if someone had convinced living tissue to grow into precise mathematical forms. Spines jutted from the dorsal section like the backbone of some prehistoric beast, while the forward section tapered into a serpentine head, complete with what looked like closed eyes. "What the hell is this thing?" Marcus muttered, approaching the massive craft with cautious steps. Station Commander Walsh appeared beside him, her weathered face creased with concern. Salvage crew found it drifting in the void sector. No power signature, no life signs, no response to hails. The scanners can barely penetrate that hull material. We're calling it a total loss, but the insurance company wants a full assessment before they write it off. Marcus circled the ship slowly, his trained eye cataloging the damage. Micro-meteorite impacts peppered the hull like ancient scars. Several of the dorsal spines showed stress fractures, and a section of the port side had been peeled back, as if a giant claw had raked across it. But what caught his attention wasn't the damage, it was the craftsmanship underneath. Every line, every curve spoke of a technology so advanced it bordered on art. The hull plates weren't welded or bolted together. They seemed to have grown into their current configuration. Where human ships relied on bulky external components, this vessel had somehow integrated everything into its sleek form. "How long has it been drifting?" Marcus asked, running his hand along the impossibly smooth surface. "Based on the stellar drift calculations, our best guess is somewhere between 80 and 120 years. Could be longer." Walsh handed him a data pad. "The really strange part is the composition. Our analyzers can't even identify the primary hull material. It's not any alloy in our databases." Marcus studied the sensor readings, frowning at the impossible numbers. The ship registered as having a mass that should have made it impossible to move, yet somehow maintained structural integrity despite decades of exposure to hard vacuum and cosmic radiation. "You want me to crack this thing open?" he asked. "If anyone can figure out how it works, it's you. The science teams are excited about the potential technological insights. Just be careful. We have no idea what kind of power systems this thing might have." Left alone with the mysterious vessel, Marcus began his methodical examination. The first challenge was finding an entry point. The ship's surface appeared seamless, with no visible hatches, airlocks, or maintenance panels. He spent 2 hours mapping every square meter before he noticed something unusual near what he assumed was the forward section. A series of intricate symbols were etched into the hull, so faint they were almost invisible unless the light hit them at precisely the right angle. They formed a complex pattern that hurt to look at directly, as if the markings contained more dimensions than his eyes could process. Marcus photographed the symbols and ran them through the station's translation algorithms. The results were frustrating. The computer identified partial matches with 17 different languages, but couldn't provide a coherent translation. However, one pattern stood out. Several of the symbols resembled mathematical constants, specifically those related to quantum field equations. On a hunch, Marcus pressed his palm against the center of the symbol cluster. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the markings began to glow with a soft blue light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The hull material beneath his hand grew warm, then suddenly liquid, flowing away to reveal an oval opening just large enough for a human to pass through. The interior of the ship was as breathtaking as the exterior was mysterious. Bioluminescent strips provided gentle illumination, revealing corridors that curved and branched like blood vessels. The walls had the same organic quality as the hull, smooth and seamless, with a texture that felt almost alive under his fingers. Marcus activated his suit's recording systems and began to explore. The ship's layout defied conventional logic. There was no clear distinction between decks or sections. Instead, spaces flowed into one another following some alien aesthetic that somehow felt natural, despite being completely foreign to human sensibilities. He found what appeared to be living quarters, though the furniture was designed for a being roughly 12 feet tall, with a fundamentally different body structure. The sleeping alcove was circular and elevated, surrounded by what looked like personal effects frozen in time. Crystals of various sizes and colors were arranged in complex patterns, some still glowing faintly with internal light. The control center, when he finally located it, took his breath away. Instead of buttons and screens, the command interface consisted of floating holographic elements that responded to touch and gesture. Most were dark and unresponsive, but a few still flickered with residual power. Marcus spent hours studying the control systems, gradually beginning to understand their logic. The ship's designers had created an interface that was almost intuitive once you understood its underlying principles. Rather than discrete controls for individual systems, everything was interconnected through what appeared to be a form of artificial intelligence. The breakthrough came when he discovered the ship's diagnostic system. A series of touch-sensitive nodes along the main console lit up when he approached, displaying what could only be damage reports and system status information. The ship was hurt but not dead. Its power core was intact but operating at less than 1% capacity, and critical systems were in emergency shutdown mode. Marcus had always possessed an almost supernatural ability to understand complex machinery. His colleagues joked that he could communicate with machines better than he could with people. As he worked with the alien ship's systems, that intuitive connection seemed stronger than ever. The ship's responses to his commands felt almost eager, as if it had been waiting for someone who could understand its needs. Working 18-hour days, Marcus began the painstaking process of bringing the vessel back to life. He jury-rigged power connections to bypass damaged conduits, fabricated replacement components using the station's industrial printers, and slowly coaxed sleeping systems back to consciousness. The most challenging aspect was the power core itself. The device was unlike anything in human technology, a crystalline matrix that seemed to generate energy by manipulating space-time at the quantum level. Marcus couldn't fully comprehend how it worked, but he could see where cosmic radiation had degraded its focusing elements over the decades. Using a combination of human engineering techniques and careful observation of the alien technology's own repair protocols, Marcus gradually restored the power core's efficiency. Each small success brought more systems online, and with them, more clues about the ship's origin and purpose. The vessel's memory banks, when they finally came online, contained fragments of data in the same symbolic language he'd encountered on the hull. Star charts showed regions of space far beyond human exploration, and what appeared to be diplomatic documents suggested the ship's owner had been some kind of ambassador or emissary. 3 weeks into the restoration project, Marcus made his most significant discovery. Hidden deep within the ship's central core was a stasis chamber, and it wasn't empty. The occupant was clearly the ship's owner, a being that perfectly matched the vessel's aesthetic. 12 feet tall with an elongated, graceful form, the creature possessed features that were distinctly draconic, yet undeniably intelligent and noble. The stasis field was failing, its power reserves depleted after more than a century of operation. Marcus realized he had perhaps hours before the system collapsed entirely, which would almost certainly kill the being inside. The control systems for the stasis chamber were among the most complex he'd encountered, requiring precise calibration and an understanding of alien biology he simply didn't possess. But Marcus had spent weeks learning the ship's language of lights and symbols. The diagnostic systems had become familiar friends, and the vessel's AI seemed to respond to his intentions as much as his actions. Working with a desperate intensity, he rerouted power from non-essential systems and began the delicate process of safely bringing the chamber's occupant out of stasis. The process took 14 hours of constant attention, monitoring dozens of variables as the alien's body slowly returned to consciousness. When the stasis field finally dissipated and the chamber opened with a soft hiss, Marcus found himself looking into eyes that held the depth of centuries and the wisdom of ages. The being's first words, spoken in accented but perfectly understandable English, would echo in Marcus's mind for the rest of his life. "You have given me back more than my ship, human. You have given me back my life." The Dragon's Tale. Prince Zephyr stood slowly from the stasis chamber, his movements fluid despite having been unconscious for over a century. His scales shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted between deep blue and silver as he moved. And when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "I am Prince Zephyr of the Drakmori Imperium," he said, inclining his head in what Marcus somehow understood was a gesture of profound respect. "And you are the one who has restored my ship with such skill and dedication." Marcus took a step back, overwhelmed by the alien's presence. The prince radiated an aura of ancient dignity and power that made the human feel suddenly small and insignificant. "I'm just a mechanic, Marcus Chen. I was hired to assess the damage to your vessel." Zephyr moved through his ship with obvious relief, his clawed hands dancing over the restored control surfaces. Displays that had been dark for Marcus suddenly blazed to life at the prince's touch, showing star maps and data streams in the flowing alien script. "Just a mechanic," the prince repeated, and there was something that might have been amusement in his tone. "Do you realize what you have accomplished? This ship is not merely a vessel. It is a living creation, grown rather than built. It bonds with its caretaker on a quantum level. The fact that it responded to your touch tells me you possess gifts that your own species likely cannot comprehend." Marcus watched in fascination as the prince interfaced with his ship's systems. The alien's movements were like a complex dance, calling up holographic displays and manipulating data with an ease that spoke of centuries of practice. The ship itself seemed to purr with contentment, its bioluminescent strips pulsing in rhythms that felt almost like a heartbeat. "I've been curious about something," Marcus said, gathering his courage. "The damage patterns on your hull, they're not from meteors or cosmic debris, are they?" Zephyr expression darkened. "You have an observant eye." "No. Those wounds were inflicted by the Void Hunters. They attacked my ship while I was conducting diplomatic negotiations with the hegemony of distant stars. The battle lasted 3 days." The prince gestured to a wall display that showed what appeared to be security footage from the ship's exterior cameras. Marcus watched in amazement as massive, insectoid vessels swarmed around the dragon ship, their weapons carving bright lines of destruction through space. "The Void Hunters are an ancient enemy of all civilized species," Zephyr continued. "They consume technology and life with equal appetite, leaving only empty space behind. My mission was to forge an alliance against them, but I arrived too late. The hegemony had already fallen." The footage showed the dragon ship fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Marcus could see the precise moment when multiple enemy weapons struck the stasis chamber's power conduits, forcing the prince to enter emergency hibernation to survive. "Your ship fought valiantly," Marcus observed. "Those targeting algorithms are incredible. I watched it track dozens of enemy vessels simultaneously." "The ship is an extension of my will and consciousness," Zephyr explained. "Drakmori vessels bond with their pilots during a process we call the joining. It allows for reaction times measured in microseconds rather than minutes." But the process also means that if the ship dies, I die with it. Marcus began to understand the true magnitude of what he had accomplished. He hadn't just repaired a machine. He had saved a life and possibly prevented the loss of irreplaceable knowledge and technology. "How long have you been searching for the Void Hunters?" Marcus asked. 700 years of my life have been devoted to understanding and combating this threat. They appear in waves, consuming entire sectors before disappearing back into the space between galaxies. Each time the surviving species forget the lessons learned at such terrible cost. The prince called up a galaxy-wide map that showed the progression of Void Hunter attacks over the millennia. The pattern was clear, a methodical advance that consumed everything in its path before retreating to digest its conquests. According to the data, humanity's corner of the galaxy was directly in the path of the next predicted wave. "When will they come here?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Based on their historical patterns, your species has perhaps 50 to 70 years before the next incursion begins. The Void Hunters prefer to attack civilizations that have achieved faster-than-light travel, but have not yet developed adequate defenses. Humanity fits that profile perfectly." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had only achieved reliable FTL travel 30 years ago, and their defensive capabilities were still primitive compared to what he was seeing in the Drakmori archives. "Is there anything we can do to prepare?" he asked. Zephyr studied Marcus with those ancient eyes. "That depends largely on whether your species can overcome its tendency toward internal conflict. The Void Hunters are most successful against divided civilizations. Unity is the only defense that has ever proven effective against them." The prince began showing Marcus detailed tactical analyses of previous Void Hunter campaigns. The pattern was always the same. The enemy would infiltrate and study their targets for decades before striking, using the species' own strengths against them. They turned communication networks into weapons, corrupted artificial intelligences, and exploited every weakness in their target's technology. "But there is hope," Zephyr continued. "Your species has already demonstrated something remarkable. You, Marcus Chen, were able to interface with technology so far beyond your current understanding that it should have been impossible. This suggests that humanity possesses latent abilities that could prove crucial in the coming conflict." Marcus was skeptical. "I just have a knack for fixing things. That's hardly a superpower." "Consider this," the prince said, calling up a holographic representation of the ship's quantum-level structure. "My vessel's control systems require a form of consciousness that can operate on multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Most species require decades of training and genetic modification to achieve such interface capability. You accomplished it instinctively in a matter of days." The implications of what Zephyr was suggesting slowly sank in. If humans possessed some innate ability to interface with advanced technology, it could change everything about how the species approached space travel and defense. "I need to return to my people," the prince said suddenly. "They must know that I survived and what I have learned about the Void Hunter threat. But first I have a debt to repay." Zephyr moved to what Marcus now recognized as the ship's fabrication bay. The prince's hands moved in complex patterns over the control interface, and Marcus watched in amazement as the alien machinery began to construct something at the molecular level. "What are you making?" Marcus asked. "A gift," the prince replied. "Your species will need every advantage in the coming years. This device will allow humans to begin developing the interface technologies you will require." The fabrication process took several hours, during which Zephyr shared more details about Drakmori technology and philosophy. The prince spoke of worlds where the boundary between living beings and their tools had been erased, where consciousness could flow seamlessly between biological and artificial forms. When the fabrication was complete, the prince presented Marcus with what appeared to be a simple crystalline device no larger than his palm. The crystal pulsed with the same bioluminescent glow as the ship's interior lighting. "This is a consciousness interface matrix," Zephyr explained. "It will allow you to share your knowledge and experiences directly with others of your species. More importantly, it will help them develop their own interface capabilities." Marcus accepted the gift with trembling hands, feeling the warm pulse of the crystal against his skin. "How does it work?" "Simply focus your thoughts on what you wish to share while holding the device. The matrix will encode your experiences in a form that other humans can absorb and understand. Your knowledge of my ship's systems, the techniques you developed for repairing alien technology, all of it can be passed on to those who come after you." The prince began preparing his ship for departure, running through diagnostic sequences that filled the air with harmonious tones. Marcus realized that his time with this incredible being was coming to an end. "Will I see you again?" Marcus asked. Zephyr paused in his preparations. "If my people approve the plan I intend to propose, yes. The Drakmori Imperium has remained isolated for too long, believing ourselves above the concerns of younger species. Your actions have reminded me that wisdom and capability are not limited to those with the longest histories." The prince moved to the ship's communication array and began transmitting a complex message in the flowing Drakmori language. Marcus watched the alien symbols scroll across the displays, understanding that he was witnessing something historic. "I am requesting permission to establish formal contact with humanity," Zephyr explained, "to share our knowledge of the Void Hunter threat and begin preparing your species for what is to come. It will be controversial. The Imperium has not taken a non-Drakmori ally in over 2 millennia. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. A simple salvage job had somehow become a pivotal moment in human history. The device in his hands might be humanity's first step toward technologies that could ensure their survival. As Zephyr completed his departure preparations, Marcus uploaded copies of all his diagnostic data and repair procedures to the station's computers. Whatever happened next, humanity would at least have a record of this first contact with truly advanced alien technology. The prince's ship began to hum with power, its hull patterns shifting and flowing as systems came fully online for the first time in over a century. The vessel that had been a derelict wreck just weeks ago was now a masterpiece of living technology, ready to carry its master back to the stars. "Thank you, Marcus Chen," Zephyr said as he prepared to board his restored ship. "You have given me back my life and my purpose. In return, I hope to give your species the knowledge they will need to face the darkness that approaches." Marcus watched through the observation windows as the dragon ship gracefully departed from the station's docking bay. Its movement was nothing like human spacecraft. Instead of the crude thrust and momentum of chemical rockets, the alien vessel seemed to flow through space like a living creature swimming through an invisible ocean. Long after the ship had disappeared into the star field, Marcus stood holding the consciousness interface matrix, wondering if he had just witnessed humanity's salvation or its doom. Only time would tell if his species could rise to meet the challenge that Prince Zephyr had warned them about. The alliance forged. 6 months after Prince Zephyr departure, Marcus Chen found himself standing in the council chambers of Earth's United Colonial Administration, the consciousness interface matrix clutched in his sweating palm. The device had proven even more remarkable than the prince had promised. Not only could it transfer knowledge and experiences, but it had also awakened latent abilities in several humans who had interfaced with it. Dr. Sarah Kim, the UCA's chief xenobiologist, had been the first to successfully connect with the Matrix. The experience had fundamentally altered her understanding of consciousness itself, allowing her to perceive technological systems as living entities rather than mere machines. Within weeks, She had developed revolutionary advances in AI integration that made human computers seem like toys by comparison. Commander James Wright, Earth's top military strategist, had used the Matrix to absorb Marcus's memories of the Void Hunter battle footage. The knowledge had driven him to completely restructure humanity's defensive strategies, implementing new doctrines based on the swarm tactics and quantum-level coordination that the alien invaders employed. Now, as Marcus faced the assembled leaders of human civilization, he could see the doubt and fear in their eyes. The consciousness interface matrix had provided undeniable proof of the Void Hunter threat, but many still struggled to accept the reality of what was coming. "The transmission arrived this morning," announced Director Chen Li, head of the Deep Space Communication Array. "It's definitely from Prince Zephyr Thal's ship, but the message is unlike anything we've ever received." The chamber's main display activated, showing a complex holographic representation that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. As the assembled officials watched, the display resolved into the familiar figure of the Drakmori prince. But he was not alone. Beside Zephyr Thal stood another figure, clearly Drakmori but somehow different. Where the prince's scales shimmered with blue and silver, this being radiated gold and crimson hues that seemed to generate their own light. The newcomer's presence conveyed even greater authority than Zephyr Thal's, and when it spoke, the translation software struggled to convey the harmonics underlying its words. "I am Empress Thyraval, sovereign of the Drakmori Imperium and keeper of the ancient protocols. Prince Zephyr Thal has presented me with a most unusual request, the establishment of a formal alliance with a species that has existed for less than a cosmic moment." The Empress's gaze seemed to look directly through the transmission at each person in the chamber. Under normal circumstances, such a proposal would be rejected without consideration. The Imperium does not ally itself with civilizations that cannot demonstrate both technological sophistication and cultural maturity. However, recent events have caused us to reconsider our traditional policies. Zephyr Thal stepped forward in the hologram. "Your mechanic, Marcus Chen, accomplished something that our greatest engineers declared impossible. He not only repaired a living ship using primitive tools and intuitive understanding, but he also formed a quantum bond with technology that should have rejected his consciousness entirely. This suggests that humanity possesses capabilities that extend far beyond your current technological level." The Empress continued, her voice taking on a more urgent tone. "Our deep space monitoring networks have detected disturbing activity in the void between galaxies. The hunters are stirring earlier than predicted, and their new formations suggest they have evolved beyond our previous understanding of their capabilities. The timeline for their next incursion has been revised. Humanity now has perhaps 20 to 30 years before the first scout fleets arrive." A wave of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. The original estimate had given humanity 50 to 70 years to prepare, and even that had seemed impossibly short. Now they were being told that the timetable had been cut by more than half. "However," Zephyr Thal said, raising a clawed hand for silence, "we do not come bearing only dire warnings. The Imperium is prepared to offer humanity something unprecedented, full technological partnership and defensive alliance." The implications of this offer hit Marcus like a physical blow. Everything he had learned from the consciousness interface matrix told him that Drakmori technology was centuries, possibly millennia ahead of human science. An alliance with such an advanced civilization could transform humanity's prospects entirely. Empress Thyraval activated another holographic display, showing what appeared to be construction activities in several star systems. "We are prepared to establish joint research facilities in your space, where human and Drakmori scientists can work together to develop hybrid technologies. Your species' unique interface capabilities, combined with our advanced manufacturing techniques, may produce innovations that neither of us could achieve alone. Director Martinez from the Colonial Defense Force leaned forward in her seat. What would you require from us in return for this alliance? Commitment, the Empress replied without hesitation. The coming war will demand everything from those who participate in it. We need assurance that humanity will dedicate its full resources to the effort, not merely whatever forces you can spare while maintaining your internal conflicts. The holographic display shifted to show Earth itself, highlighting areas of ongoing political tension and resource disputes. Your species' tendency toward fragmentation is well documented. The Void Hunters exploit such divisions with surgical precision. Unity is not merely preferable for this alliance, it is absolutely essential. Marcus found himself rising from his seat, surprising everyone, including himself. Your Majesty, he began, then stopped, unsure of the proper protocol for addressing an alien empress. Thyraval's expression showed what might have been amusement. Speak, Marcus Chen. You have earned the right to address us as an equal. The consciousness interface matrix that Prince Zephyr gave me, it's been awakening abilities in humans that we never knew we possessed. Dr. Kim has made breakthrough advances in AI integration. Commander Wright has developed defensive strategies that incorporate principles from your ship's combat systems. If we could expand this program, train more people to interface with advanced technologies. An astute observation, Zephyr interjected. The Matrix was designed specifically to accelerate this process. However, the awakening of such capabilities requires careful guidance. Improperly developed interface abilities can result in psychological damage or even death. The Empress gestured, and new displays appeared, showing complex training facilities and what appeared to be advanced medical equipment. As part of our alliance proposal, we would establish interface training centers in your space. Drakmori mentors would work with selected humans to safely develop their consciousness expansion capabilities. Dr. Kim stood up, her excitement evident. The applications would be revolutionary. We could develop spacecraft that respond to pilot thoughts, weapons systems with instantaneous reaction times, manufacturing processes that operate at the quantum level, and defensive networks that could adapt and evolve in real time, Commander Wright added. If we could coordinate our entire fleet through enhanced consciousness interfaces, we might actually have a chance against the Void Hunters. Empress Thyraval's expression grew more serious. Do not underestimate the enemy we face. The Void Hunters have consumed civilizations far more advanced than either of our species. Even with our combined technologies and capabilities, victory is far from assured, but together we have a chance that neither could achieve alone. The holographic display showed the current positions of human colonies and Drakmori space, overlaid with projected invasion routes based on Void Hunter behavior patterns. The strategic picture was sobering. Both civilizations were positioned directly in the path of the predicted incursion. The proposal before you is unprecedented in Drakmori history, Zephyr continued. Never before have we offered full technological partnership to a species so young. But your mechanic has demonstrated that wisdom and capability are not measured solely in years of existence. Marcus felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him, even though the chamber held only a few dozen people. His simple repair job had somehow become the catalyst for humanity's entrance onto the galactic stage. There is one final consideration, Empress Thyraval said. If humanity accepts this alliance, there can be no turning back. The Void Hunters will identify you as our allies and target your species accordingly. You will become participants in a conflict that has raged for millions of years. Director Chen Li cleared his throat. How long do we have to decide? The Imperium Council will convene in 30 days to ratify this proposal, the Empress replied. We will require your answer by then. However, know that preparation cannot wait for formal approval. If you are willing, we can begin establishing the first research facilities immediately. The transmission shifted to show detailed technical specifications for the proposed joint facilities. The technology involved was so advanced that Marcus could barely comprehend the basic principles, despite his enhanced understanding from the consciousness interface matrix. "I recommend we proceed," Marcus said, his voice carrying more authority than he had ever possessed before. "The prince saved my life by trusting me with his ship. Now he's offering to save our entire species. We'd be fools not to accept." Commander Wright nodded grimly. "The military applications alone justify the risk. Our current defensive capabilities wouldn't slow the Void Hunters down for more than a few hours. This alliance might be humanity's only chance for survival." As the debate continued around him, Marcus found himself thinking about the moment he had first pressed his hand against those alien symbols on Zephyr Thal's ship. Such a simple action, driven by nothing more than curiosity and intuition, had set in motion events that would reshape humanity's entire future. The consciousness interface matrix grew warm in his palm, and for a moment Marcus could swear he felt the presence of the Dragon Prince across the vast distances of space. Whatever humanity decided, their fate was now inextricably linked with that of their alien benefactors. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous. Humanity would accept the Drakmori alliance and face whatever consequences followed. As the transmission ended with Empress Therival's regal nod of approval, Marcus realized that his days as a simple mechanic were over. The universe had much larger repairs in mind for him. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of Frontier Station, watching as the first Drakmori construction ships arrived to begin building the joint research facility. The alien vessels moved with the same fluid grace he remembered from Zephyrthal's ship, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of technologies beyond human comprehension. But for the first time since this incredible journey began, Marcus felt hope. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they had allies who were willing to share their knowledge and stand beside them in the coming storm. The consciousness interface matrix in his pocket contained the experiences and wisdom of both species, a bridge between two very different forms of life that had somehow found common ground. The future would be dangerous, filled with challenges that would test both species to their limits. But as Marcus watched human and Drakmori engineers working side by side to construct something entirely new, he knew that this alliance would prove stronger than the sum of its parts. The Void Hunters might be ancient and terrible, but they had never faced the combined ingenuity of dragons and humans working toward a common goal. The real adventure, Marcus realized, was just beginning.